A background of digital communication. Given the increasing dependence of people on emails, blogs, forums, and social media to communicate with a wider audience, it is important to know the acceptable ways in which to communicate in these digital settings. People who are inexperienced in the cyberspace culture are susceptible to committing a few etiquette mistakes. Sometimes the lack of face-to-face interaction can make it easy for people to misunderstand or misinterpret the meaning behind the content shared. Knowing some of the basic etiquette skills can benefit anyone interacting in a digital forum.
Let's go over some key terms. Netiquette, the acceptable way of communicating on the internet. Blog, a discussion website published online that typically consists of informal diary-style text entries. Posts are generally displayed in reverse chronological order so that the most recent post appears first at the top of the web page. What are some blogs that you have used before?
So your religious blogs, okay. That may be a little bit of a different one. Have you ever come across some blog post on there where people may be not communicating effectively or maybe communicating the wrong way on a blog post? All the time. Yep.
Here's some more terminology. Social media is an interactive computer-mediated technology that facilitates the creation and sharing of information, ideas, career interests, and other forms of expression through virtual communities and networks. What do you use social media for? Or what social media do you use?
Facebook and Instagram. Okay. And a lot of times on Facebook, you can see that sometimes people aren't using the right etiquette on those as well. Whether it's punctuation or being mean to each other online, things like that. A lot of times it does come across on Facebook and Instagram. And so although typically we aren't the ones doing it, you do see that happen in certain instances a lot of times through social media.
Okay, email is an electronic mail method of exchanging messages between people using electronic devices. A website is a collection of related network web resources such as web pages, multimedia content, etc., posted online.
All right, so now we're going to do a little activity. It'll be a little bit different since we just have one participant on today. But we want to think about some of the best practices you can adopt when communicating online. And so when you communicate online, there's typically these three situations that you come across. One-on-one, so an example of that would be communicating via email or directly messaging someone, whether it's on Facebook or Instagram, with a team of people. And so that could be if you're in a mass or an email that has more than one recipient on that email, or even also if you do use any of those Microsoft Teams group chats, or even communicating on those specific teams that a lot of times we're involved in with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension. And then the other scenario that we can think about is with a wider audience. So that would be with our social media post, Facebook, Instagram. I know some of our offices do use things such as Twitter as well. And so all of those would be forms of communication with a wider audience. So looking first at just one-on-one, whether it's a direct message or email, what are some of the best practices or things you can think of, guidelines per se, that you can follow when you're emailing someone or direct messaging someone? What are some things to keep in mind when communicating one-on-one online? You're getting half the message, no verbal or facial cues. Very good, yes. And so that's one thing we talked about in our lesson on Wednesday, was when we're communicating online, we can't hear tone, we can't see how the person's body language is when they're sending a message. And so things can be misinterpreted in the aspect of tone and body language. Very good. What about with a team of people? Is there anything else that you would consider when you're communicating through an email to multiple people, or if you're in a group chat? Same issues, yep. And then when you're communicating with a wider audience, whether you're posting something on Facebook or you're commenting on a post through Facebook, what are some things to consider when communicating that way? No worries. And so those are some great answers. Thank you, Mr. McBride. And now we'll review some of the other things we can consider as well when we're communicating in all of these forms, whether it's one-on-one, with a team of people, or with a wider audience.
So you should try to be brief. You should keep the message to the point, provide context, and don't skimp on details. An ideal length would be between a short single paragraph and at the most 2 paragraphs. A lengthy message will lose its audience. Have a subject. Including a concise and clear subject line will get people's attention and elicit an appropriate response. Be yourself. Write your messages in your own unique style. Don't try to pretend to be someone else. Be professional. Be careful with your choice of words. Review the message to ensure it will not be misinterpreted.
Thank you, Jasmine. And yeah, so for those netiquette tips, those are definitely ones we should follow with that one-on-one communication, especially through email. And then also through social media posts, we can think of that as well, especially if we're trying to provide our audience with some sort of information, whether it be about an event or something that you're providing as a service, that you want to follow these 4 guidelines for that. That way you get your point across. It's in a professional way, as Jasmine was saying, and that you can get the information to them without having extra things added into there.
Okay, here's some more netiquette things. So, read it twice. Check your message for misspellings, punctuation errors, and grammatical errors. Many operating systems have these features built into their programs. Emoticon and emojis. Use emojis sparingly to enhance the message. Don't overuse them. Embrace diversity and be inclusive. Be polite and respectful of other people's rights and privacy in your message. Practice empathy and ensure the message is inclusive of people from diverse backgrounds. And follow your IT policy. Strictly follow your organization's information technology policy on the responsible use of internet to communicate effectively.
You should also try to avoid sending large attachments. Check with the recipients before sending any attachments larger than 5 megabytes. Use alternate storage options like cloud systems such as OneDrive. Don't be a flame. Do not create controversies, spread rumors, or slander individuals. Refrain from excessive complaining and annoying others. Forwarding messages. Do not forward messages unless you thoroughly read the message and deem it necessary to share.
Don't abuse the hashtag. Use a minimum of 2 hashtags for social media posts. Make sure that the hashtag is short and has a meaning. Respect the law. Do not commit any unlawful or illegal activities while online. Rule of thumb. Do not include any information in a message that a close family member, for example a parent, would not like to see, hear, or read.
All right, thank you, Jasmine and Zoe, for giving us those netiquette tips. And so we know that was quite a few different netiquette tips, but now what we're going to do is look at some examples of email interaction, social media interaction, and try to identify some of the things that were done that maybe should not have been done, or ways that they could have communicated more effectively. So I'll have to exit out of this presentation for that one. And let me see if I can share it through Teams directly. Okay, so we're going to skip ahead to some of our examples. And on my screen, this is kind of small. Is this presenting full screen for you guys? Okay, great. And so we'll look at that top example, our email from Deborah Smith to Sarah James, and just review that email and what are some things that may could have been done differently to either enhance her message or to make it a more clear and concise message. Absolutely. So yes, we reviewed that a little bit in our previous lesson as well. Using all caps is never a good idea in an email message, especially if it's work related. And so just keeping that in mind and making sure we're using proper grammar and punctuation when we are communicating via email. Another thing she did is the subject of the email was just a question mark. It could have been maybe a better email if she related the subject line to what her question was about. That way it could give Sarah a little bit more detail about what she has a question on before Sarah James would reply to Deborah. Let's look at the bottom example of the bottom post of the social media post and the one outlined in the red box. So it looks like they said, actually excited for jury duty tomorrow. It's going to be fun. Fun to tell the defendant that they are guilty, and they have a little tongue sticking out face in this message. What are some etiquette rules that they maybe did not follow in this post? Yes, sounds like he's not engaged with the jury concept. Very good. And also, it might even be not 100% sure, but it could even potentially be unlawful to make a post about a jury duty that you're currently sitting on as well. And so, yeah, it's always best to avoid posting things or oversharing information that you should not be putting on social media for anyone to see. And so that was not very good etiquette on this person's part. And let's take a look at, let's take a look at the bottom one. So someone posted a photo of some houses and said these builders should be incurring a cost for their crappy pop-up neighborhoods. There is such a thing as irresponsible development, and that is certainly happening in the location that it's happening. All these additional residents at a rapid rate are saturating the housing market, overcrowding the schools, and placing a significant burden on the town's infrastructure. And it says, great job, and then it lists the local government, and thank you for trying to protect our home. And so what's something that they may be doing in this social media post that is not proper etiquette? Very good. Yes, so sarcasm is not always effective, and then also just posting that out to anyone may not be the best way of going about the situation, and so that is not proper etiquette there as well. And then in the blacked out section of the government, they could be calling out local government and potentially slandering that for no reason, and so that could also be some improper etiquette rules as well. And on our last slide, so if we take a look at that bottom email from Carrie White to Melissa Jones, she says, Melissa, we need to talk about your performance ASAP. I bet it is nice to take extra long lunches. Everyone knows your meetings do not last as long as you say they do. See me now, from Carrie. What are some improper or some etiquette rules that are not being followed in this email? Yes, Carrie should just ask Melissa to come see him or her. That email is just very aggressive and not directly to the point as well. They do use all caps in there. The subject is just ASAP, and so that's not a very professional way to go about something, even if Melissa may be in the wrong on some area regarding that topic. There are better ways to go about speaking to someone about an issue. And so very good. All right, so thank you, Mr. McBride, for participating in that activity. And let's go back to our original presentation. And so we talked about a few different ways to communicate digitally. What are the 3 ways of communication online that we talked about? Good. Email, social media, and text. So that could be the one-on-one, whether it's an email, and then a wider audience could be for those social media post, or if you're in a large email with multiple people, and then that group setting as well, which could be text messages or a group chat through Teams or whatever it is that you may use to communicate with direct messaging to multiple people at a time. What are some things you should do while communicating online? Very good. Keep it short and to the point. Get your message across clearly and as efficiently as possible. Very good. And then what are some things you should maybe avoid while communicating online? Definitely, there are some things that you should save to say in person. That goes back to how we were speaking on the fact that we aren't able to see body language or tone when you're communicating online, and so it's always something to keep in mind when you're sending messages to someone, whether it's email, social media, is just remember that people are not going to be able to clearly understand your message, and as you said, Mr. McBride, you're only getting half of the message when communicating digitally. And so yes, there are definitely some things that are better to be said in person. That way the message is not miscommunicated in any way. All right, Mr. McBride, thank you again for joining us for our 4-H Tech Changemaker Tech Week and being a part of all 3 of our presentations. If you wouldn't mind taking our survey on this presentation, and then we forgot to put this up during Wednesday's presentation as well. So feel free if you'd like to fill out another one for Wednesday's presentation. And then thank you to our 4-H Tech Changemakers, Miss Jasmine and Miss Zoe. And we hopefully will have some more online events in the future. And we look forward to seeing you all again on some other topics that we may have.